Hey YouTube, so I went to Rausch Creek with Off-Road Consulting for their Blue Guider ride, and please like and subscribe. And so anyway, you'll see the kind of the speed of the video kind of changes around, so I can compress the video a little bit so it's not quite so long. This is like double speed right now, but it'll slow down. So anyway, this is the Blue Guider ride. We are on a couple green trails right now, specifically the X2 trail and the X1 trail, and this is the Northeast property. And one of the things that somebody brought up with me that I'm starting to think is true, is some of the greens at Rausch are a little bit more interesting than a lot of the greens at AOAA. The opposite can be said about the blues. The blues are a little more interesting at AOAA than they are at Rausch, and we're about to see that in the video, because right now we're on a green, and this green is kind of a little bit not so interesting. Looks kind of like a gravel road, but you'll see what I'm saying just in a couple seconds.
So this is X1. This is interesting. It's a green. But when you look at it, it almost looks like a blue. Like this looks more challenging.
What was that?
I think it was a tire that popped.
Ours?
No.
Maybe they just popped some air out.
Yeah, I think your tire came off.
Hey Keith, hold up. Yeah, is that flat?
Yep. I thought I saw that pop a bit.
That's what I heard. Tell me you have a flat tire.
Hey Keith, we got a flat tire back here.
I thought I saw somebody out of the vehicle. Alright, we're going to just pull aside here and I'll walk back, see what I can do to help.
Hey guys, so there's Keith coming down, the trail guide. So when you're the trail guide, it's usually, or the person in front, usually it's a good idea to actually try to help out a little bit more than everybody else helps out. I mean, it's kind of just sort of expected, at least, even if you're just there for leadership. In the end, he didn't really have to do a whole lot. We had it under control. So here are some other Jeeps. This is actually the green guided ride. Going down this green. They were the ones that were next to us in the parking lot video that you saw. So this is Off-Road Consulting also. And they're just coming down this trail. And the one thing I'd like to point out on this trail is you would almost never see this like at AOAA. Like there's no way that on most trails where you'd have like a Jeep just like parked. Like you can see them just parked on the trail. People are just like going around me. On most of the trails, like even most of the greens, like there's just not enough room to have two vehicles. And you'll see like right here, like they're coming down, I'm going up at the same time. And there's plenty of space. We're not like touching. I mean, there's like easily like a couple feet now. They're staying on the upper part, and I'm on the lower part. Not really caring, but still, very, very wide trails. Okay, so what happened with the flat tire? So I'm not really sure exactly how the person ended up with a flat tire, but he ended up knocking the tire off the bead. So that just means that like the rubber part of the tire came off the metal part of the wheel, and it was only on the inside. It wasn't on the outside. So because only one part of it came off the bead, it was very easy to get it back on the bead. So I carry a floor jack around me in the back of the Jeep. I find them much more useful than high lift jacks, and I think I mentioned that in other videos before. With a high lift jack or the farm jack, you have to actually raise like the vehicle up enough that you get the vehicle raised up, it maxes out the suspension, and then you keep on lifting it, and then it'll go up. So you have to literally have the high lift jack go up a couple feet just to cut a couple inches off the tire. Where if you put a floor jack underneath a axle, it's much easier, because if you push the axle up 2 inches, the wheel goes up 2 inches, which is really nice. And the one that I got was at Harbor Freight. It's an off-road one. It has like this like kind of round adapter on it, so it even works on like really large Jeeps, like with 40-inch tires. So anyway, so he knocked it off the bead. So all we did was we just used a floor jack, and we just raised the tire up off the ground, and then we put a high-speed compressor on there and started trying to fill it up with air, and then we just sort of pushed on the tire and literally just pushing the rubber against the metal got it close enough that it just basically popped back on its own. And it was popped off like on the inside, not on the outside. So just kind of pushing on it. And this is another group that we're passing in the same thing. You know, they're not even getting off the trail. We're not even getting off the trail. We're just kind of going around them. You just, I don't know, at the park you don't see this. Like, first off, you don't see other vehicles very often. But then when you do see them, there's not really, the trail just isn't wide enough to support having two people go around it. So the interesting thing is that this trail that we're on is a green. If you look at it, it's so washed out, it actually seems more like a light blue. If you compare this trail to the N2 trail, which was the one that we just filmed in the previous video, that area seemed much more interesting than the blue area of N2. So, you know, it's kind of odd that the green trail has more obstacles and is way far more interesting than the blue trail. So maybe this green trail should be marked as a blue, and maybe the blue trail over there should be marked as green. I'm not really sure. But you did see that you know, the other Jeeps, the green group was going down that area. You know, so maybe that's, once again, I mean, that area was probably a little more advanced than most of the greens at AOAA. So maybe what the other person was saying, you know, the greens are a little more interesting. So Keith wanted to turn here. That is X4, and that would have taken us to 36 and 32, a bunch of blues, and he ended up not being able to go over there. So instead we end up going around, and we end up jumping on 40, which takes us back around to those blues. So right now I believe we are on X1, and this is X1 heading it up to X3. So it was the X2 trail that we were on that seemed so interesting. That seemed like probably the most interesting green that we've been on today. Actually, it probably was the most interesting trail that we've been on altogether, greens and blues combined. And it's marked as a green on the northeast side. And we will see that we actually find some more trails that are even more interesting really soon, like in either the next video or the one after that, because we get into like the 40s and 36s and stuff and that kind of stuff, and it's the obstacles do get quite a bit larger, to the point that on some of the trails it's just me doing them.